Why does the US-China trade war still matter? And how did a tariff battle become a global power struggle? In 2018, the Trump administration launched a sweeping set of tariffs on Chinese imports. Beijing retaliated. What started as a dispute over steel and intellectual property quickly escalated into a high-stakes battle for economic and technological dominance. But this wasn't just a reaction to unfair trade practices. It was a clash of ideologies: free market capitalism versus state-backed mercantilism. And it reflected growing fears in the US about losing ground in manufacturing, innovation, and global leadership. The conflict has reshaped supply chains, inflated consumer prices, and pushed both nations into strategic decoupling. Yet many Americans still ask, did it work, and was it worth it? This trade war is not over. It has evolved into a long-term rivalry touching everything from AI to microchips and rare earth minerals. And it's not just an issue for policymakers. It impacts your job, your costs, and the future of globalization itself. Was this conflict inevitable or manufactured? For decades, the US encouraged China's economic rise, believing that integrating them into the global economy would lead to political liberalization and fair competition. But as we approached 2020, it became clear that China played by different rules. Forced tech transfers, state subsidies, currency manipulation, and intellectual property theft created deep frustration among US businesses. Meanwhile, Chinese exports flooded global markets and undercut American workers. The Trump administration seized on this anger and launched aggressive tariffs to level the playing field. But others argued this confrontation was years overdue, and bipartisan frustration had been building. Still, some economists say tariffs were the wrong tool. They sparked retaliation, hurt American consumers, disrupted global trade, and didn't fully address the underlying issues. What's clear is that this wasn't just about numbers. It was about national identity, jobs, pride, and the fear of being left behind. Do tariffs punish the other side, or do they hurt us at home? Many Americans believe tariffs punish foreign nations, but the reality is more complicated. Tariffs are taxes on imports, and as such, these costs are usually passed on to businesses and consumers. In the US, everything from washing machines to agricultural equipment got more expensive. American farmers were among the hardest hit. China halted billions in agricultural purchases, forcing the US government to issue massive bailout packages just to stabilize the heartland. Small and mid-sized manufacturers also struggled. With prices on raw materials rising, some were forced to downsize or shut down altogether. Meanwhile, global companies shifted production to avoid tariff zones, reshaping global supply chains. China, for its part, felt the sting, but its authoritarian system allowed it to shield certain industries and direct support where it was needed. The pain was shared, but uneven. Trade wars are never clean. They're economic earthquakes, with aftershocks that ripple through factories, grocery stores, and family budgets. What deeper fears are driving this conflict between the two superpowers? Behind the headlines lies a bigger story: a rising China challenging a dominant America, not just economically but geopolitically, technologically, and ideologically. China has invested heavily in AI, green tech, 5G, and military modernization. It's also building influence through its Belt and Road Initiative. The US, for the first time in decades, sees a peer competitor with global ambition. This trade war is just one front in a broader contest. Tech bans, sanctions, and tightened investment rules signal a pivot from cooperation to confrontation. It's no longer just about dollars, now it's about dominance. At the heart of it is a question the world is grappling with. Can two superpowers coexist peacefully in a multipolar world? Or are we witnessing the early stages of a new Cold War, one fought not with missiles, but with chips, data, and supply chains? Has the trade war achieved any of its intended goals? Supporters argue the trade war finally got China's attention. Beijing signed a Phase 1 deal, pledging to buy more American goods and make structural reforms. US companies say the spotlight helped them renegotiate unfair contracts. Yet much of the agreement was symbolic. Many promises went unmet. Structural issues like subsidies and IP theft remain unresolved. And US exports still face retaliatory tariffs. At home, the results are mixed. Some industries were reshored, but others buckled under higher costs. Inflation pressures spiked in the sectors hit hardest by disrupted imports. Biden's administration kept many of the tariffs in place, signaling bipartisan continuity but also caution. Few believe the U.S. can go back to pre-2018 normal. In the end, the trade war didn't break China or remake America, but it did redefine the relationship and make clear this rivalry is here to stay. Is the U.S.-China trade war creating a new world order? The world watched closely as the U.S. and China went toe-to-toe. For smaller countries, it became a lesson in navigating great power competition. Many hedged their bets, diversifying trade, building regional alliances, or staying neutral. Global supply chains were upended. Companies accelerated the China plus one strategy, moving some production to Vietnam, India, or Mexico to reduce risk. The pandemic only amplified these shifts. Emerging economies saw both danger and opportunity. Some gained investment. Others faced inflation, instability, and diplomatic pressure to choose a side. International institutions like the WTO were weakened. Trade norms eroded. Multilateralism gave way to bilateralism and economic nationalism. What started as a bilateral feud is now reshaping global trade and forcing the world to adapt to a new era of fragmentation. Is long-term cooperation still possible, or is the current strategic rivalry the new normal? Some experts believe the US and China are locked in an irreversible decoupling. Others argue that interdependence is too deep, and cooperation, however tense, is inevitable. Areas like climate change, pandemics, and AI regulation demand collaboration. Yet trust is low, and public opinion in both countries has hardened. Business leaders quietly push for pragmatism. Diplomats search for off-ramps. But hardliners on both sides see concessions as weakness. The fear of losing face has replaced the desire to build bridges. Still, history shows that rivals can compete and coexist if rules are clear and lines are respected. Cold War lessons offer hope for managing tension without escalation. The question isn't whether we'll compete, it's how we'll compete, and whether we can do so without burning the house down. How does a global trade war hit home for workers, families, and the future? This isn't just about tariffs or treaties. It's about your life, your job, your paycheck, and your access to affordable goods. The trade war may seem distant, but its impacts are deeply personal. If you work in tech, manufacturing, agriculture, or logistics, this conflict touches your career. If you shop for groceries, electronics, or medicine, then you're seeing the ripple effects in your wallet. The bigger worry is what comes next. Will this rivalry fuel innovation or lead to stagnation? Can we secure our supply chains without isolating our economy? Young people entering the workforce now face a world defined not by shared prosperity, but by competition, restrictions, and caution. The US-China trade war isn't just policy, it's part of your future. That's why understanding it isn't optional, it's essential. Is this a turning point or just a temporary truce? On May 12, 2025, the United States and China announced a significant de-escalation in their ongoing trade war. The US agreed to reduce tariffs on Chinese goods from 145% to 30%, while China lowered its tariffs on US imports from 125% to 10%. This 90-day agreement aims to provide a window for further negotiations and to ease tensions that have strained global markets. For the US, this reduction in tariffs is expected to alleviate some of the inflationary pressures that have burdened consumers and businesses. Lower import costs could lead to decreased prices for goods, benefiting American households. Additionally, the agreement may restore confidence among investors and manufacturers, potentially leading to increased economic activity and job creation. China, on the other hand, stands to benefit from renewed access to the US market, which could bolster its export-driven economy. The reduction in tariffs may also encourage Chinese companies to engage more openly in trade discussions, addressing long-standing issues such as intellectual property rights and market access. However, the agreement is not without its limitations. Certain tariffs, particularly those related to national security concerns, remain in place. Moreover, the 90-day timeframe underscores the temporary nature of this truce, with the potential for tensions to resurface if substantive progress is not made during this period. For American citizens, the immediate effects may include lower prices on consumer goods and a more stable economic outlook. Yet the long-term implications will depend on the outcomes of ongoing negotiations, and the willingness of both nations to address deeper structural issues in their trade relationship. Will this agreement pave the way for a stable economic future? The recent US-China trade agreement marks a hopeful step towards resolving a conflict that has had far-reaching economic implications. By reducing tariffs, both nations have signaled a willingness to engage in constructive dialogue, potentially setting the stage for more comprehensive reforms. However, the temporary nature of the agreement means that significant challenges remain. Structural issues such as intellectual property rights, market access, and trade imbalances continue to require attention. The success of this truce will depend on the ability of both countries to make meaningful progress in these areas. For the global economy, this development offers a respite from escalating tensions and provides an opportunity for markets to stabilize. Yet, the fragility of the agreement underscores the need for vigilant monitoring and sustained diplomatic efforts. American consumers and businesses may experience short-term relief, but the long-term benefits hinge on the durability of this agreement and the resolution of underlying disputes. As such, continued engagement and negotiation are essential to achieving lasting peace in US-China trade relations. What do you think President Trump's 2025 tariffs will result in, and will it be positive or negative for the country? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notifications bell if this video helped you understand what's happening behind the headlines. And please share it with someone who doesn't understand the issue as well as they need to. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.